I think that there's a spectrum of karmic relationships. Again, depending on, let's say, what you actually called in, what you need. For the most part, I would say the majority of karmic relationships are unfortunately toxic. That is where you're going to see a lot of addiction. You're going to see, let's say traits of narcissism, avoidant attachment. The karmic relationship is one where you might even experience or call in that partner who has mental health issues. And unfortunately, that's also the relationship where abuse is the most common. So unfortunately, yes, I think the karmic relationship is the one by far that is the most toxic.
Welcome to the Spiritual Quest podcast, a transformative journey where we step into a world of wonder and exploration, seeking answers to profound questions. Why am I here? What is my mission in life? And how can I make a positive impact in this world? Join me and my inspiring guests on a spiritual quest to fully embrace your uniqueness and speak your truth with grace and gratitude. I am your host, Vibeke Garnos, always guided by spirit.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another intriguing episode of the Spiritual Quest podcast, where today we are embarking on our journey of self-discovery and cosmic insight with the wonderful Kate Rose. As the author of the enlightening books Written in the Stars, The Astrology of Soulmate, Karmic, and Twin Flame Relationships, and You Only Fall in Love 3 Times, Kate weaves the celestial dance of the stars into the fabric of our lives. Kate is not only a gifted writer, but also a seasoned therapist, relationship expert, spiritual intuitive, and astrologer. And Kate's unique approach combines the wisdom of the cosmos with a therapeutic insight, guiding her clients to illuminate their life paths and dispel the shadows of self-doubt. So be prepared to be inspired as Kate Rose helps us unlock the universe's wisdom and explore the celestial map of our souls to inspire change and illuminate the journey that awaits. It's with great pleasure I welcome Kate Rose to the Spiritual Quest podcast. Hello, my friend, and welcome.
Hello, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
I'm so excited to have you on. I mean, this topic is such a powerful topic to me personally because love is all that is, right? For
I
us,
tr-
it's yes. And we all seek love in our lives. Yeah, whether it's called soulmate, karmic relationships, whatever, we are curious about love, especially in this human form. So you're this expert here. So we're going to dive right in, okay? But we would
let's
love to learn a little bit about you, Kate Rose. First of all, your upbringing and how did you end up, being a relationship expert, but also astrologer, combining these two.
I grew up with a single mother in Massachusetts in kind of the mountains and hills, and I was an only child. So my siblings, my companions, were my imaginary friends that I had, the different energy and atmosphere of what that childhood was like, my pets, my animals. But it was spent outside. It was spent being very reflective already, although I didn't know that at the time of being a child. But having that space and time, I think really allowed me to go more within and to kind of explore my own self at that age. Through my upbringing, I did somewhat lose a lot of the natural inclinations. I remember even reading my mother's astrology a book that she had when I was 7 or 8, and I don't know if I necessarily comprehended or fully understood it, but it fascinated me. And I would sit
Mm.
there and just read through the sun signs and moon signs. And I am a believer that many times those things that we're drawn to as children are also those things that do carry over from past lives, where we're kind of just having this unadulterated, whatever we feel called to pursue. And so my love of astrology really began sitting on the floor of my mother's bedroom, looking through her astrology books. And it wasn't just my own that I was aware of and reading, but just all the information. And I think I remember being fascinated by how there were differences according to your zodiac sign. But again, I was in high school then later on, and so I kind of put a lot of that away. I didn't really feel like maybe it was accepted or how to actually embrace that part of myself with the pressures of college and marriage and all of the things that come with adulthood. And so I got married and I had 2 wonderful daughters, and I started having an inclination and feeling that I wasn't gonna be married forever. And I told him that
Wow.
actually. He didn't really enjoy it when I told him, understandably, but it was just this feeling that this was not where I was meant to remain forever. And the marriage did end, and I don't say unfortunately because I think that everything that transitions in my eyes or ends is for a purpose. But that moment of now being a single mother and being alone again, kind of with my own thoughts, my own self, even though I had 2 children, it was almost like everything that I was when I was younger finally was able to come through. Of course, with those dark night of the soul moments,
So,
but in that I started to hear myself again.
oh,
And
wow.
it was shortly after that that I started writing, and it was literally during an astrological transit. It was a grand cross that I had in my chart, and I woke up and I had just I knew that they were titles for articles in my head, and I wrote them, and they both were accepted and published that same day. And so I have been writing ever since, and I wrote the first moon articles for Elephant Journal because as a woman especially, I feel very connected to the moon phases, the importance and significance that it has in our life. And that kind of birthed the astrology. And then on this journey, it started seeming like rather than 2 separate aspects, they were really one. This whole
Mm,
idea of not just astrology, but what's the purpose in our lifetime? What are we meant to experience and learn and grow through? And so that's kind of where the newest book, Written in the Stars, was birthed from, is just realizing that everything is in fact connected.
wow. You know, we just spoke right before we went live, right? Talking about similarities, no coincidences. And another one just jumped out after the dark night of the soul. I also had this reawakening to my own soul. I heard my own voice speak to me after I was willing to let go of my life. I said, if this is the life, I'm willing to release it. And I fell asleep and I woke up and I actually heard the most beautiful voice. And I started to cry because I knew that was my soul voice. I
Mm,
hadn't heard it for many years. So that was
same.
my visit. And I was like, when you said that, I got goosebumps. I'm like, another cool,
Ah,
yeah.
I feel like because it's such a profound, I think, event when there's a part of you that goes silent in your life, and I think that that part goes silent when we're not necessarily living in alignment with our soul, with our
So true.
truth, and but perhaps we need to be able to learn that in order to hear that, but hearing that voice again, it's it's profound. You feel finally connected to yourself, and I think that's that aspect where so many times in life we're seeking connection. Like, what can I do in my life that will make me feel fulfilled? But it's not necessarily found, I don't believe, in what we do. It's more of being able to finally hear our own self again.
And that brings me into our topic for today, karmic relationship, twin flame, soulmates, because we both know that, that voice that I heard, it was the most loving voice, and I cannot describe it. It's more powerful than words. It just filled me with so much peace and faith and hope. It was just, I don't have words for it. It was just wonderful. And I thought, I'll be able to do this. I do not need somebody to rescue me or lift me up. I got this power. Because I lost myself in looking to my children, seeing that I don't, what kind of mother am I being if I'm bringing this kind of low energy into the relationship? I don't want to be that draining mother. That's what I was thinking because I knew what my energy would affect or how it would affect my children. So I did separate myself a bit. But as I was waking up, I started to reflect that love is so much more that I had to learn to allow them to love me in a way to be able
Mhm.
to take care of me as well, or to show them I could open myself up enough. I loved myself enough to allow them to love me. Do you? Am I making myself clear?
I mean,
So yeah.
yes,
So I'm like,
that is that is
oh.
exactly what I talk about. That is exactly what I believe, and I do think that so many, especially of, let's say, our earlier romantic relationships, I think in essence we choose those because we're still seeking all of those things that you mentioned from somebody else instead of realizing, wait a second, I am the only one that can actually empower myself. I'm the only one that can really love myself and give myself permission to be whoever we're meant to be. And so that aspect of realizing that we can't wait to be rescued or wait to do that and really kind of getting our power away in those moments, the power of our soul, it really does allow us to receive. And I that is one of my most favorite words. And that word is also really heavily tied to the twin flame dynamic of what
Mm,
does it mean to actually be in that connection. And receiving is really one of the themes that really dominates that relationship.
love it. And before we get into the specifics of the twin flame, we will go dive into the specific. But let's start by asking you what the intention behind writing Written in the Stars. Let's start there.
The intention was ultimately to help people because I do truly believe that we are all capable of having an amazing, healthy, incredible love. I think that we are able to have both passion and connection and consistency, and we don't actually have to choose. But so many of the reasons why we might not have that has nothing to do with our worthiness. It doesn't have to do with where we live or how we live our social life. It has to do with our childhood wounds. So the purpose of this was to help people realize one, there was nothing wrong with you for choosing the partners that you had, that it was really your childhood wounds. And by leaning in, looking within, spending that time with yourself, that is ultimately what changes the pattern so that you can really be loved and love in the ways that feel most authentic and healthy for you, because I truly believe that not just having it positively affect our romantic relationships, but how different would our physical world actually be if more of us were able to actually realize and heal those parts of ourselves that potentially was causing issues in outside of our lives.
So, yes, I so agree with you. So that may let's move into the topic of soulmate first, because that's something I
Mhm.
resonate with a lot in my work as well, but also because I'm going to share that story now and I'll have your take on it. Um, so when I had my second child, I was holding her in my arms. I remember this vividly. We came home from the hospital. I held her in my arms and I looked at her, and something, I was suddenly in this bubble of energy exchange. It was a deep, deep connection. Um,
Mhm.
and I have
Mhm.
another child, so I know the connection, but this was something different. And it
Mhm.
was hard for me to express it because you love both your children, but it was something different because all relationships are different. And I was holding her and I was looking into her eyes and I said, I know you. I know you. And I said it out loud. And my husband goes, well, you know her? I'm like, I know her. I mean, I know her. She's my soulmate. And it was just, it was so not something I would ever think about in that way, because it was the connection was something that just arose within me. It was that really powerful. And as I acknowledged it, I got flashbacks of previous
Mhm.
lifetimes. Things started to flash before my eyes, and I remembered small pieces of lifetimes with this, my youngest. And I suddenly got this. I chose her to be my daughter in this life because we've had so many partner lives. Like we've been husband and wife, we've been um, lovers, we've been all this. And this sounds weird for people who's like, can you talk
Yeah.
about that with your mother or your daughter? But we've had so many
Yeah.
lifetimes together playing that part together. So we wanted to explore how it would be to be, mother and daughter and and so
Birds.
forth. And it was just such an awakening, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in trouble because you're gonna test me like nobody else, and she's the one who tests me." Like, do you really have unconditional love for your children? I mean, seriously, she's like
I
there.
as I shared, I had 2 daughters and a youngest, and I absolutely understand that sentiment.
Okay, so please share what is soulmate and how do we recognize it?
So I actually love that you shared that story because it really is able to depict what the soulmate is. So the soulmate is someone who is from your similar soul family. It can absolutely be your child. It can be your pet. Even you and I, we could have been soul friends. We talked beforehand. There's a lot of similarities there. So your soul family is just a collection of souls that may or may not be into your life on a regular basis, that you are all part of the same collection. You're part of the same purpose, the same path together. So when we meet our soulmate in this lifetime, usually it's someone, again, that we have a lot of similarities with. It also tends to be one of the earlier loves. We think of, like, let's say the high school sweetheart or the person that lives down the street, someone that perhaps maybe we even meet miles away from where we lived, but ends up feeling like they grew up in a very similar way than us. So the soulmate is someone that, again, we're looking for same soul family, similarities usually are the key. A lot of times, soulmates can even kind of look like one another to a degree with certain physical attributes. So, with this soulmate, though, especially when we're saying in a romantic relationship, there's nothing that usually ends up being very wrong in the soulmate relationship. It's not going to be that chaotic, painful feeling that we get with the karmic relationship. And actually, in all of my research, most of, let's say, grandparent, great grandparent generations, they actually married and remained with their soulmate for their entire life. There was not the karmic relationships for the most part. There was not the twin flames. It was just the soulmate. So the soulmate relationship isn't one that's bad or horrible, but what becomes very challenging is how, kind of like what you and I were just saying, how do we learn how to hear our inner voice in a relationship that allows us to say the same?
Mm.
And so that's where we end up kind of making that ultimate break or that split from our soulmate, is that there might not be anything wrong or awful or bad, but we just realize that we can't necessarily hear our own voice. We can't really feel like we're living our purpose or being able to explore what does it mean to be a conscious human in this lifetime if we stay in a place where we don't have to.
Mm. So, looking at the soulmate aspect, what you're saying is that we can all have
Mm.
soulmates, that's not always in a loving or I would say romantic. That's what I mean. Because loving, I have a loving relationship with my daughter, but I
Let
mean
me, yeah.
romantic relationship because a lot of people tend to think that many soulmate we've hear about the term soulmate and we think that, I'm looking for my soulmate out there in the world, but it might just be somebody else, like a friend or somebody else that comes into your life. Yeah.
A child. I truly believe I had a cat pass away, earlier this year. I called him my soul cat. It was the bond was like nothing else I've ever experienced.
I love that
So
you said that.
it can be very much with anyone, any animal. It's that idea that the soul mate really is just speaking to your, just like you recognized your daughter. You're recognizing it. Even if we're not consciously aware of it in the way that you were in that moment, we're recognizing something within this other person or this other animal that is familiar, that's safe. We know each other. We know each other.
Mm. Oh, so good. So, what about karmic relationship? Is there a lot of karmic relationship in this world at this moment, and why?
There are a great deal of karmic
I thought so. Yeah, that's my question.
when and as challenging as it can be, is if people listening are finding themselves in them, it actually speaks to the evolution of humanity and our souls, because the karmic relationship, as challenging as it is, and that is a very kind way to say that many times the dark night of the soul is brought on by your karmic relationship. Your greatest life challenges, some of the most toxic, unhealthy moments of yourself in your life will be experienced with your karmic. But so is the sense of awakening. So is the sense of excitement and passion and connection. And we will feel that we have known our karmic partner in past lives. We will ultimately feel that connection. We will feel that bond. Many times, just because of the chaotic nature of karmic relationships, many times people first think that that's their twin flame. But then we have to go through the process and we say, if this is love, this twin flame love is the healthiest, most kind of spiritual high love that we can experience in this lifetime, Would it be someone that continually cheats on you? Would it be someone that ghosts you? Would it be someone that's emotionally unavailable or married? And so that's trying to ground it a little bit in that reality of you're feeling this connection, you're feeling the bond, but it's so you can learn the lesson, not so the relationship can last forever. The
Mm.
karmic relationship, the purpose of that in our lifetime, why we're calling that in and why so many of us are going through this or have, is that the karmic relationship allows us to really focus on healing ourselves. And that's not just our childhood wounds or what we went through in grade school. It's also, as this generation is being asked, we're also healing the generational trauma and karmic lessons that previous generations just haven't been able to. There's so much of that mentality that has shifted where there was a survival mode for so long in previous generations. And with the survival mode, you're not able to step into and have the space to heal, to thrive, to explore more spiritual topics. And so now that we're in a different state, many of us, you're seeing more and more people say, well, what does it mean to not just survive, but thrive as a soul in this lifetime? And that means that we have to look at healing and healing our inner child, healing our generational wounds and karma really allows us to get to a space where we are connected, I believe, with our spirit. We're connected with our soul. We're feeling a greater connection to the world around us. We're lacking judgment. We're more accepting. We feel more confident, more secure, especially in terms of attachment. And then at that point, usually in the karmic relationship, the ultimate reason why it ends is that we finally learn what we deserve. And
Mm.
we know that we're not asking for too much. And so even if this, the chemistry is off the charts, and even if it feels like you're never going to be loved in the same way again, it's that idea of, wait, I know that I deserve more. I deserve consistency and healthiness, and I deserve commitment, whatever it might be. And so being able to be in that place of knowing our worth is what helps us transition eventually out of the karmic, where it's very much like once the lesson is learned, the teacher disappears.
So true. That's true. But I am questioning because looking at the star, is this karmic relationship? It is, from my perspective, we choose this lifetime. We have different pathways we can choose as we are in this, they're parallel realities, to call it that. And we are in cross points in our lives where we can choose, right, to continue going that path or choose another path. And I, for instance, feel like you said, the moon cycle, but also I'm looking at the stars. I'm looking at what portals, what galactic energies are moving in order to make a conscious decision on all levels, like the spiritual, mental, emotional, and the physical level. What is the best time for me being a Scorpio? So I'm looking at my sign. So is the karmic relationship that you might know that you have or you're experiencing and you're thinking, oh, this is really hard to get out of. What is the best way to deal with the karmic relationship when it comes to being a spiritual human being on earth, having a soul, being aware of the consciousness of, the stars and everything, the alignment of all that? What is any tips how we can move? Or maybe, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about, yes, do that.
So if we're in a karmic relationship and we're saying, okay, how can I know for sure it's karmic? How can I get out of it? How can I learn more? So the first thing that you might want to do before we kind of get into, let's say, more spiritual or deeper aspects is just say, is there anything about my karmic relationship that is familiar or similar to anything I went through as a child? One that helps open up our lens of having that conscious choice, as you said, because we can choose to be in a karmic relationship for 3 years. We could also choose to be in it for 20 years. It does come down to choice, and choice is then defined by truth. How much truth are we willing and have capacity for at any given time? So looking at the relationships and saying, okay, honestly, for instance, it's quite similar. If let's say we had a parent when we were growing up that had alcoholism, quite similar to end up attracting a partner who has that as well, or that you feel the need to take care of. So those are the types of kind of things that you want to pull out of the relationships. The next thing to reflect on is saying, okay, what are all of the ways that I felt like I wasn't seen or loved or validated or cared for as a child? when you have that list, I always say kind of envision it being one column. On the other side, then start thinking about what you can do for yourself to start fulfilling those needs. It's not a matter of bringing it to your partner, but it's first having you look at what you can do for yourself. And then as far as the astrology goes, I think that plays a huge part. And what I see with the astrology is that we will be given windows of opportunities. Like, for instance, Pluto is back in Capricorn, turning direct next week. That's the last time in our lifetime that we are ever going to see that. So that's quite a dramatic window for people who, let's say, have Capricorn in their fourth house, home and family, 12th, house of the subconscious. So it's looking at and being able to say, okay, what is going on with the astrology? Why do I feel like everything is coming up? Why am I having a dark night of the soul? And then being able to embrace that time for what the purpose is. Many times I feel like we experience the most challenges when we fight against the reality of what is.
Oh, yes.
My my most favorite saying has become, you can only be where you are. That's it.
Yes,
Any of us
that's
can
true.
only be where we are. But we wanna finish the lesson. We want to be in the future where we have the love and the abundance. We want to be in the situation where we have all of this greatness, but we can only be where we are. And by practicing that, I feel like it also allows us to have more truth, which then kind of begins that process of how to, let's say, heal out of needing the karmic relationship as a mirror for our own self.
Mm, I love everything that you said there. I'm like, yes, but a question. Some people say, karmic relationship is similar to a toxic relationship. Is that true in your book, or is there what do you call it, nuances?
I think that there's a spectrum of karmic relationships. Again, depending on, let's say, what you actually called in, what you need. For the most part, I would say the majority of karmic relationships are unfortunately toxic. That is where you're going to see a lot of addiction. You're going to see, let's say, traits of narcissism, avoidant attachment. The karmic relationship is one where you might even experience or call in that partner who has mental health issues. And unfortunately, that's also the relationship where abuse is the most common. So unfortunately, yes, I think the karmic relationship is the one by far that is the most toxic. But I think that's why it's important to remember, especially let's say if we are in those toxic relationships or it has but become an abusive relationship, it can be very hard to feel empowered and confident enough to make that exit strategy, to make the choice that you deserve more, that you deserve something healthier. And so by understanding and realizing that you didn't miss any signs, there was nothing that you did that was wrong, that this was just something that your soul called in because you're meant to become stronger and healthier and make different decisions for you and any children. And so I think by being able to kind of realize and align with that, we're able to then move and make those big decisions in our lives without judgment or fear holding us back.
Mm, yeah.
How many times, we don't know the ultimate purpose. We can think that we know, we can feel, we can follow our intuition, but we don't ultimately know the purpose of a single decision. And so often those relationships that truly are profound or that, let's say, an option to be able to exit an unhealthy relationship, all of those things come about by just one single choice.
Mm. Imagine that. One single choice, people. It is like I always said, I choose to listen to the guidance of spirit. I decided after the dark night of the soul and I heard my own spirit, my soul speak to me. I said, from now on, that's what I'm going for. Whatever that is telling me, that is such a loving voice that I know it only has my best interest. And it's just I'm choosing that. I don't care how hard the external world, my illusion of what's going on is looking at, I am choosing that. And it hasn't been an easy path. I mean, we have people around us who think you're nuts, right? When you start making choices that they say, whoa. Yeah. But I still feel like if it hadn't been for me listening and doing what's right for me, I wouldn't be married to this beautiful man for 20 years because he was not somebody I went for. See, the toxic compared to what I needed or what I actually would fulfill something much more in my life on a spiritual level, which means it's so much easier with a partner that I feel sees me and accepts me for who I am. And I think
Mhm.
that is when I understood that, okay, so what is this relationship that, I mean, it's because I do not feel it's a soulmate relationship. I do not feel that because I felt that with my daughter, and it does not mean that I don't love my husband. I mean, I've been with him for 20 years, but it's something different. And that's makes me want to go in and talk about twin flames because I'm curious to hear your perspective on that. Would you share what is a twin flame and how do we recognize a twin flame?
So let's say classically or historically, the twin flame is described as one energy that has been split into two bodies. Although every culture has their own rendition. In Greek, is that humans were originally born with four arms, four legs, and two heads, and the gods split us in half because they thought us too powerful. And so then that would mean that we were forever destined to wander the earth looking for our other half. So, a lot of, let's say, and again, just like everything else in our world and society, what we first discovered or first believed about twin flames, just as in terms of, let's say, technology and spirituality, all of that is evolving as we're learning more. And that's also what has happened with twin flames. So, we're realizing that, yes, there is a profound and deep soul connection with twin flames. It is one that can't be broken, and we can't ultimately choose not to engage with it because it is part of our soul contract, I believe, in this lifetime. But one of the most kind of new discoveries is that unlike before, if we read a lot of the older twin flame writings, they talk about the runner and chaser phase. But really, that actually depicts the attraction of the anxious and the avoidant in the karmic relationship and not the twin flame. So the twin flame ultimately is attracted either very much through kind of a means that you even described with your husband, where it's like a friend of a friend, but if you hadn't done this one choice, it wouldn't have turned out. Twin flames can also be someone that maybe has been in your life, but perhaps you weren't kind of on that same vibrational frequency just yet. So the twin flame is someone that once we kind of make that choice from our soulmate, we're going to listen to our own voice and identify our truth. And then we move through our karmic relationship. And I personally don't believe that there's any sort of perfection that we're going to reach in this lifetime as far as our healing. Our goal is to not be perfect. It's to simply embrace what is and to be part of the process.
So
So
agree.
that means that we're healing ourselves, and that healing is going to be an ongoing journey because now we're aware of what we need, and that might shift from day to day. So once we have that aspect of worthiness and healing begun in the karmic, then we start moving into another phase of our life. And in that time frame, we become more aware of what we personally need, what love means to us. We're more comfortable with our own self. We're comfortable in our own space, advocating for ourselves. And so at that point, we're able to come into alignment with our twin flame, who doesn't mean about being the same as, let's say, more of the soulmate is, but they are on a similar vibrational. So they're also ready for that type of romantic relationship and connection. And the twin flame relationship is really defined as two people who have begun the journey of consciousness, who have begun the journey of work, of becoming their best self, which really is the self that our soul was destined to be. And on that journey, you then can explore love and you can engage with it and continue to grow together because, as you said, both people are loved and allowed and accepted just as they are, which could be one version today and another version 5 years from now, or even tomorrow.
Mm,
So
yeah.
the twin flame is really about the love coming together of two people who are kind of enmeshed on that journey of growth and healing and awareness, and that there is a profound level of self acceptance, acceptance for the other, and just that aspect of receiving, because
Mm.
that does become the most difficult aspect. Because up until the twin flame, we were not really have been, let's say, loved in the ways that we needed or desired. Maybe bits and pieces here or breadcrumbs at times, but never actually that love and connection. And so being able to fully receive the twin flame love into our life it's a lesson of the relationship, but it feels much, much different than the lessons of the karmic. because we're opening ourselves more. We're opening more of our hearts and more of our souls to receive something that we actually know that we've always deserved.
So does that mean, to use another word, opposite attract? I've heard that. Would you say that that is sort of, or could be, a description of a twin flame?
It absolutely, I would say, is because I've never encountered any twin flame couples who, let's say, are very similar. You're not going to get that in that connection. You're going to get one person who, let's say, is much more connected to spirit and they're having their altar and connecting with crystals. And then you're going to get somebody else who is much more kind of grounding that person into what this human life is. And that's the whole idea. And that's where I think originally that aspect of, let's say, the two halves or the two bodies of energy came from, is that together there is balance. So in the twin flame, it's not about being the same, but because we've accepted ourselves, we attract someone into our life who accepts themselves and who is able to also accept us. And that we're actually stronger together with that sense of balance together than if we would be, let's say, if we're just with someone who is the same. So, and that's where I feel like it's much more of a healed way of viewing this type of relationship rather than thinking that our twin flame will make us whole, as let's say some of the historical writings have said.
Yes, I so agree with you there too, because nothing can make you whole unless it's yourself. I mean, you have to find that within yourself, right? Is it true that we all go through three different relationships in one lifetime? That's a
We
question.
Absolutely. So we are seeing more and more people doing that because of that evolution that we're now in the place to do that. However, that does not mean that every single person in this lifetime is meant to do that. Because I truly believe that we do have a different purpose for our soul. I do not believe that if anybody is in a truly toxic, unhealthy, or abusive relationship, your fate or destiny is not to remain there. That is the number one thing. However, there are many people who are still coming into this lifetime. I think perhaps maybe the youngest person I've spoken with is maybe late 20s, early 30s, where it feels like potentially at this point they feel like maybe their purpose is their soulmate. And obviously that can change, like does change in ways that we can't imagine or predict all the time. But I've also spoken, there's a woman in her 70s that I connected with, and we did her astrology chart, and she ended up, I've never seen this many in my life. She had 12 soulmates, romantic
Wow.
that she had called into. Oh, yes. Like she had 2 karmics, but they were very short time in college. But 12 soulmates. These and actual partners that she had been, boyfriend, girlfriend with at a certain point. And one of them she had reconnected with. And so we had a really honest conversation and she said, "Look, can we be honest?" And I was like, "Of course." She's like, I'm in my 70s." I think she said 76. She's like, "Is it bad if I stay with my soulmate?" And I told her, I was like, "Absolutely not, because obviously you keep calling them in. So one, there's a purpose here." I was like, "But if this relationship feels good, if it feels healthy, if you enjoy it, if you're comfortable with your life, if you're being respected, then no, nothing bad or catastrophic is going to happen. You're not going to have done something wrong if you choose to stay with your soulmate." So I think more and more people are using relationships kind of as that mirror for their own soul evolution. But it doesn't mean, like you said, relationships aren't all the same and we're not all the same. So I think that we do have each our own purpose, but I don't think that that's wrong or bad. I think just because, let's say, someone has a twin flame in this lifetime and someone has a soulmate, it doesn't mean one is worse off than the other. It means perhaps the next lifetime that person will have a soulmate. And that I kind of look at it all as we're all at different kind of mileposts on the similar journey.
Mhm. So how can we call in our twin flame?
So
People.
there's numerous ways. There's one, obviously, we could definitely use the moon astrology, which I'll speak to in a second. But to call in our own twin flame means, are we looking at ourselves? Are we still using other people to feel good, whether through friends with benefits, or something else? Are we still seeking outside of ourselves what we need to give ourselves? So, really, the first and best thing to call in that twin flame, amazing, healthy love is to make sure that we're focusing on ourselves, making sure that we're comfortable being alone, that we're enjoying it. I always say it's kind of like this phase of dating yourself for a period of time where you just really enjoy your own company. And then at that point, it's making sure that we're putting ourselves out there in new situations. We don't all have to necessarily download an app or go to the corner bar or whatever it might be, but we do need to make sure that we're opening ourselves. Are we going to a sound bath? Are we going to a lecture? Are we going to different places that we enjoy? Where if we bump into someone, the universe actually has a way to help bring something together. Then there's also that aspect of using the moon rituals, which I went into and written the stars, where you can use the zodiac sign of your own moon. And then, let's say on a new moon, be able to set the intention to call in your twin flame. And by saying, I have done that work, I love myself, and I'm calling someone into my life to love me and accept me just as I am. And so I think all together is really where we kind of resonate with that highest power, where not only are we just planting an intention with the moon, but we also have that grounded, everything's about balance, that grounded self-work to kind of back up our readiness for what we're saying that we desire.
I like that ritual. Is it the new moon or full moon? Or both?
So with calling in a twin flame, you 100% want to do a new moon because the new moons represent new beginnings. And then you want to incorporate crystals. I mean, rose quartz is obviously a great one, but tiger's eye can be really great too for different aspects of, let's say, passion and healthiness at the same time, courage, boldness. I also love using herbs in rituals, whether it's just simply putting rose petals with your intention as you fold it,
Oh, yeah.
rosemary for healing, and really making it something special and sacred. I have a bit of a garden right outside my front door, and the amount of rituals planted in that garden is
I love
incredible.
it. It's a sacred place.
It really is. Underneath all the minted roses, there's so many intentions in there.
Okay, I could talk to you forever. This topic is wonderful. I love this topic. But time flies and I really want to hear your point of view on what do you think we should as a collective um do to how should I say it? Open ourselves up to more love, like the pure love,
Yeah.
the unconditional love. Any suggestions? Because we're talking to so many different signs at this time, right? We're all,
Nice.
but there is a unity force in place here, a collective. So, what would you say is the best tips or anything you can talk to the collective that we all can get some inspiration from, if you wish?
The purest love is the one that I believe is without judgment. And that also
Yeah.
is one I truly believe that is born within. So even let's say beginning a daily ritual of your gratitude and compliments for yourself, for who you are, not what you do, not what you do for work or the roles that you fill for others, but expressing that gratitude for yourself. Even simply saying, I am grateful both of us showed up for this today, and having that genuine meaning in our heart and in our purpose in it. Because the more that we can express gratitude for ourselves, even if we're not quite sure how to embody that pure unconditional love, gratitude, I believe, paves the way for that. And when the more gratitude that we have, the less room for judgment, either of self or others, I think exists.
Beautiful. And I so agree with you again because this time period that we're in, the shift what we're all experiencing, it is the collective release of judgment that really
Yeah,
will set us free
I
from.
completely agree.
Yeah. So I am so with you and I love our conversation and I love you, Kate Rose. I mean, seriously, this is beautiful. I want everyone to go and get the book because I think this is really something that we can cherish for ourselves. Like this is a sanctuary to get to know ourselves, to do some inner
Yes.
work without and fun inner work. Not, I think learning about yourself should be fun. I mean,
Completely agree. It should be enjoyable. It's
y-
you. You should enjoy getting to know yourself.
so true, so true. So, any final words for everyone watching or listening to this podcast today?
just never give up hope. No matter what your past has involved, you have gone through precisely what you were meant to bring you to this moment. And now, by learning from it, you can have all of the love, the life, the abundance that you desire. It is all possible.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on the Spiritual Quest podcast, and you're always welcome to come back and share your wisdom with us. I appreciate you, Kate,
Thank you so much, Laka.
and thank you everyone for being here and joining us for this conversation. I appreciate you all, and I hope you found some inspiration in what Kate has shared with us today. And before I end, I want to share a small thing with you that I think it touched me and I wanted to share it. It's a quote and it is from Kate Rose and it's from Written in the Stars. So I'm going to end with this and I wish you all the best. So here we go. Even on your darkest days, when you are unsure how to go on, how it will ever feel okay again, the stars are aligned in your favor. Thank you everyone for being here. I love you all. Bye now.